May the peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon you. We always hear that some countries have nuclear weapons that they can use in wars. Other countries have nuclear reactors that they use to generate electricity. But have you ever asked yourself, what is the difference between the two? What distinguishes nuclear energy, which is used to generate electricity, from nuclear energy, which is used in war? And, most importantly, I wonder how dangerous nuclear weapons are today. And if there is indeed a new nuclear war between the major powers, as people now worry, what if these countries use nuclear warheads? The question here is, what is expected to happen? In this episode, we will explain to you how to enrich uranium. Who owns the nuclear device? Nuclear tests, it already happened? Chernobyl disaster, peaceful nuclear. Why are they used? Countries that own nuclear plants. Welcome. I am Mohammed Saleh. The world is divided into two parts regarding nuclear energy. The first part is the countries that use it to generate electricity. There are many such countries. Any country can take this step simply as long as it has the appropriate financial resources and competencies. The second part is the countries that possess military nuclear weapons. There are only 9 such countries on Earth. Let's start with this part because it is the most dangerous. We must first know how to enrich uranium. For nuclear power or weapons, the isotope of uranium was after U-235, which has 92 protons and 143 neutrons. But the vast majority of uranium we pull out of mines, 99.3% of it, is the isotope U-238, which has 3 more neutrons and behaves differently. Only about 0.7 of uranium in the world is U-235. U-235 is fissile, meaning all you need to do is split it hit with a low energy. Thermal neutron. The neutron doesn't smash the nucleus apart but instead is absorbed by the atom, making it unstable. When it splits, it releases energy and more neutrons. That can then repeat the reaction with other U-235 atoms. You can still split U-238 atoms, but you'd need high-energy neutrons to do it, which is less efficient. So when it comes to producing energy, the higher the concentration of U-235 relative to U-238, the easier it will be. Nuclear power plants that aim to produce energy steadily over a long period use pellets that are between about 3 to 5 U-235. Diffusion. To separate the uranium isotopes, the first step was to turn it into a gas by adding 6 fluorine atoms. Once gaseous, the uranium hexafluoride was pushed through membranes whose holes were just big enough to let the molecules through the lighter, U-235, move slightly more quickly through the barriers. So after several hundred membranes, the gas at the other end had the required amount of U-235. The more modern is using centrifuges, which are cylinders that at very high speed. Enough to separate the lighter, U-235, from U-238. The first step is the same turn all the uranium into gases, uranium hexafluoride. Then, like a hipster with a vinyl collection, get spinning. As the gas is spinning around, the heavier U-238 will move towards the outside of the cylinder while the U-235 drift towards the center. The slightly enriched gas there will be piped out and fed into another centrifuge, and on, and goes using thousands of centrifuges connected in series and parallel formations, steadily upping the amount of U-235 in the mix. Once uranium is 20% enriched, it's a simple matter of rearranging the centrifuges to create weapons-grade uranium very quickly. That's why a vital part of ensuring a country is only using its nuclear program for peaceful pursuits is inspecting how their centrifuges are arranged. The proliferation of nuclear weapons remains one of the most serious threats to the world, but nuclear power's potential to provide energy without adding greenhouse gases to our atmosphere is a huge possible benefit for humanity. If we're going to use uranium for the good of us and the planet, then it just needs a little enrichment. While the center fuses enriched uranium, they're also feeding them more concentrated U-238, the opposite direction, producing depleting uranium at the other end. If I asked you now, what do you know about North Korea? Often, the first thing that comes to mind is how important President Kim Jong Un is. This threatens America in that it can use nuclear weapons at any time. You might think that North Korea is the country with the largest number of nuclear weapons in the world, or at least it is among the 3 major countries. But the surprise remains that North Korea is the country that possesses the smallest number of military nuclear weapons in the entire world. North Korea possesses about 50 nuclear warheads, while America has 5,550 nuclear warheads. Russia has 6,257 nuclear warheads, so why did North Korea make all this noise when it only has 50 nuclear warheads? The answer is simple. If a country has 1 nuclear warhead, the whole world should ban it. Because 1 nuclear warhead is enough to cause massive catastrophes. Especially since the nuclear bombs that exist today are much larger and more dangerous than the bombs that existed at the time of World War II. The nuclear bomb dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima in 1945, which caused the horrific accident, contained about 64 kilograms of radioactive uranium. What is also surprising is that this bomb is considered a failed bomb. Because of the 64 kilograms of uranium, only 1 kilogram split, causing a massive explosion equivalent to about 15,000 tons of TNT. Imagine with me that all the disasters that occurred in Hiroshima were caused by 1 kilogram of uranium. What do you think of the modern bombs that exist today? The world, as you are listening to the episode now, has about 13,000 nuclear bombs. If these bombs were launched from their places, the Earth would disappear from the face of the Earth. So we can imagine the extent of the destruction that the Earth could be exposed to if all the nuclear warheads possessed by the major powers were used. We can deduce this from some of the nuclear tests that were conducted. Many places in the world have already been exposed to nuclear explosions, either through deliberate experiments and research or through some unintended mistakes, or even explosions caused by wars. In October 1961, the Soviet Union dropped a nuclear bomb for testing on the island of Novaya Zambia, located in the frozen ocean in the far northeast of Europe. This is the bomb that bore the name of the Tsar. At the time, it was the most powerful thermonuclear weapon ever detonated in the world. Its explosive power was estimated at approximately 57 million tons of TNT. This means that it is about 3,800 times more powerful than the bomb that fell on Hiroshima. The perimeter of the bomb explosion was 780 kilometers. The height of the dust clouds resulting from the explosion reached about 64 kilometers above the Earth's surface. The waves generated by the explosion circled the Earth 3 times. The frightening results of the experiment shocked the whole world at the time. It made people know how dangerous nuclear weapons currently exist. On this occasion, what is the solution to the issue of nuclear bombs owned by major countries, or do you think that the issue has gotten out of control? Does nuclear energy remain a monopoly on several countries and not allowed to the rest of the world? Or is the solution for the whole world to possess nuclear weapons, or will the world be more dangerous after that? Can you write to us in the comments? Don't forget to like and share the video to help us reach the largest number of people. Subscribe and activate the bell for those who have not subscribed yet. We return to our topic. The danger of nuclear energy exists even in peaceful reactors that generate electrical energy. What distinguishes nuclear reactors from military nuclear bombs is their type. Active materials other than uranium and plutonium can be used, such as cesium mass, and these materials usually have low radioactivity. But of course, it is still very dangerous, and the famous Chernobyl reactor accident is the biggest example in this regard. On April 26, 1986, in the Chernobyl zone near the city of Pripyat in northern Ukraine, which was part of the Soviet Union, an explosion occurred that is considered the largest nuclear reactor explosion in the world ever witnessed. There was a nuclear power plant in the Chernobyl area. At some point while experimenting on reactor number 4, the reactor's power rose to the maximum and they were unable to control it, and all attempts to shut down the reactor failed. Then there was a continuous series of explosions that spread throughout the reactor. In the first moments, about 50 people died, but no one expected at the time the scale of the disaster that would occur. So much so that the fire brigade came to the scene to put out the fire as if it was a normal fire, and there were no problems. But within a few days, the problem began to appear. About 4,000 people who were near the explosion died from radiation poisoning. In addition, 2,300,000 people from Ukraine and neighbouring countries were exposed to radiation. The wind carried radioactive dust over long distances, so much so that it reached northern Sweden. It is about 2,600 kilometers away from Ukraine. Because of this, and millions of people who were in places far from the center of the explosion were exposed to radiation and became vulnerable to serious diseases such as cancer. More than 150,000 square kilometers in Ukraine and Belarus have been destroyed and polluted. Among them, about 3 million agricultural acres have become unsuitable for agriculture. The Chernobyl zone remains abandoned to this day, and no one can enter the zone unless they protect themselves from radiation. Speaking of the Chernobyl reactor, let's now talk about peaceful nuclear reactors in more detail. To understand how to use it. Why is it used to generate electricity in the first place, although it causes all the dangers we mentioned? In ordinary power plants, electricity generation depends mainly on heat. They obtain fossil fuels such as coal, petroleum or natural gas. They are then ignited inside the stations. They then use this temperature and heat a large amount of water. This water is pumped into pipes, and through the enormous pressure that generates water vapor, a group of turbines begins to rotate rapidly, and this rotation eventually turns into electrical energy. The same series is used in nuclear reactors, but with a difference in fuel. Instead of using coal, natural gas, or oil, we use radioactive materials. Nuclear fission of radioactive materials releases enormous thermal energy as a result of the reaction. They use this thermal energy inside the plant to heat the water, and the water bypasses the turbines. The turbines move, so we get electricity. Now, since they are doing the same job, why would they use nuclear proliferation to generate electricity? The answer to this question is that small amounts of radioactive material can provide us with an almost endless stream of energy. This is what makes countries prefer to use nuclear energy to generate electricity. Let's give an example. The amount of energy we get from 75,000 litres of oil. This is equivalent to 80,000 cubic metres of natural gas. Or the 166,000 kilograms of coal that we could obtain if we performed nuclear fission of just 1 kilogram of solid uranium-135. Of course, we remain understanding of the many countries that have their eyes on nuclear energy, especially since the nuclear industries themselves are advanced and have much better safety measures than before. Indeed, there are safe ways to dispose of radioactive waste that did not exist before. We will talk about the issue of radioactive waste in detail in a separate episode. Today, 32 countries in the world have 443 nuclear reactors. In addition, there are 55 more nuclear plants under construction, which is why nuclear reactors alone provide about 10% of the electricity the world needs. It is expected to reach 15% in the coming years. France alone has 56 nuclear reactors. They generate about 70% of the country's total electricity. China has 53 reactors and Canada has 19. The United States has 11 nuclear reactors. This also includes Japan, Spain, Romania, Brazil, Mexico, and many others. And here today's episode ends, but don't forget, if you have a question that confuses you, write it to us in the comments. Goodbye.